2021 legislative session of the Penfield Town Board. I'll officially call the meeting to order, and I'll ask everyone in the auditorium to please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And this evening we have our Deputy Town Clerk, Sue Scheidt, with us. And Sue, if you would please call the roll.
Draw.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
LaFountain.
Present.
Moore.
Here.
Ogden.
Here. All right, this evening we have 3 public hearings. And before we get into our public hearings, I'm going to take one item out of order. And I'm going to recognize Councilperson Linda Cole for a proclamation for the Friends of the Penfield Library. So, Linda, if you will, please.
Okay, I have this proclamation. I'll be reading it right to Maggie Hession, who's on the board, I believe, still of the Friends of the Penfield Public Library. This is National Friends of Library Week, October 17th to the 23rd, 2021. So the proclamation reads, whereas the Friends of the Penfield Public Library raises money that enables our library to move from good to great, providing the resources for additional programming, much-needed equipment, support for children's summer reading, and special events throughout the year. And whereas the work of the Friends highlights on an ongoing basis the fact that our library is the cornerstone of the community, providing opportunities for all to engage in the joy of lifelong learning and connect with the thoughts and ideas of others from ages past to present. Whereas the Friends understand the critical importance of the well-funded library and advocate to ensure that the library gets the resources it needs to provide a wide variety of services to all ages, including access to print and electronic material, along with expert assistance in research, readers advisory, and children's services. And whereas the Friends of the gift of their time and commitment to the library sets an example for all in volunteerism, leads to a positive civic engagement and betterment of our community. And now, therefore, be it resolved that our Anthony LaFountain, Supervisor, proclaims October 20th, 26th, 2019. Well, this is off. We have a little mistake here, Maggie. I think it can be rectified. That proclaims October 17th to 23rd, 2021 as Friends of the Library Week in Penfield, New York, and urges everyone to join the Friends of the Library and thank them for all they do to make our library and community so much better. And this is dated October 20th, 2021, and signed by our Supervisor R, Anthony LaFountain. Would you like to come up to here and receive this? And I mean, I could walk over there. It might be easier.
Yeah, there we go. And it sounds like we have to make a minor update, Maggie, and we'll make sure that we do that.
Yeah.
But if you'd
like to say a few words, if you want, get the microphone back there, it'd be great.
Congratulations. Right here.
Perfect.
Thank you. On behalf of the Friends of the Penfield Public Library and our director and our people and the staff at the library, we thank you very much. But I'd like to also thank the community for coming out and supporting us in our last book sale. We made a little over 17, which was not bad for having 3 less rooms than we normally have. Thank you for your support, Town Board. And I have can I wear another hat for just a minute? I just want to say thank you to Tony. You'll be leaving. Andy Moore, you'll be leaving. We certainly appreciate all the support you people have given us through the years, and we wish you luck in your new endeavors.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you.
I'll take that hat off now, too.
All right.
Linda, thank you.
Of course.
And I expect we'll see you at our joint meeting. We're going to be meeting with the foundation people. There's no foundation. We're looking for new members to be on the board. If anybody has any recommendations, we'll take them. We need officers and volunteers for the Friends of the Library, and the foundation also needs friends. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us.
Thank you for coming in. Thank you for everything that you do. your team and the Friends for everything you do for the library to help give them all of that extra resources that they don't get through the normal budget process. So great effort.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good day,
Thanks.
evening.
Okay, I will next recognize Sue Scheidt, our Deputy Town Clerk, for the reading of the public notice for our first public hearing.
2022 preliminary and special district budget.
And
The
go
legal
ahead, Sue.
notice was published in the Democrat and Chronicle on October 8th, posted on the town website and town clerk bulletin board. No postcards were mailed, being that it was a town-wide action.
Okay, Sue, thank you very much. Mr. Horowitz, is this properly before the board?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Town Controller, Finance Director, Barbara Cherto, who will take us through the 2022 preliminary budget. Barbara, welcome, and thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you. I just want to first off thank Supervisor LaFountain and the town board for all the hard work that went into preparing this year's budget. As always, the board works together with the department heads, and we put together a fairly solid budget once again. This year, I'd also like to thank Marie Sinti for being a part of the budget process. Marie was a part from start to finish with the budget, right starting in May through the finish, and is here tonight with us. So thank you for being involved, and we all really appreciate that very much. So before I get into the summary of the budget, I just want to give you a reminder about where your property dollars go throughout the year. The town is actually the smallest piece of the pie, as you can see depicted on the screen. The town is actually getting a bit less this year out of the share. We're down to 7%. With the smallest portion, we actually provide the most necessary day-to-day services for public works and recreation, as well as facets of public safety that all residents depend upon. And kind of putting that in a more relatable perspective, if you think about what we tend to spend on our cell phone and television and internet, what we spend on that on a monthly basis, we spend well over what you really spend for your town services, which those are keeping your roads plowed, paved, park maintenance, programs and activities at the community center, and so on. For 2022, the preliminary budget appropriations do increase from 2021, which was 20.6. We are now at 21,689,100. This is primarily due for purchases planned for large equipment, but the levy will actually decrease by approximately $2,000, so there is no additional tax burden for the 2022 budget. The proposed appropriations include new sidewalk installations, 3 large plow trucks, a new Vector, a wheeled excavator, 3 light-duty vehicles, and once again, we are well below the tax levy allowed by New York State. As you can see, $519,000 below what we could have gone up according to the state. In 2013, this is just another kind of informational slide, the Office of the State Comptroller implemented a statewide fiscal monitoring system to identify local governments experiencing fiscal stress. The intention of this monitoring system was to provide an objective picture of the fiscal challenges facing local governments. Essentially, this system is an assessment of a government entity's ability to meet expenditures with revenues. For fiscal year 2020, which was the last year reviewed, Penfield once again received a status of no designation for susceptibility to fiscal stress, and our score was actually lowered from 1.7 in 2019 to 0.0, so we can't really get any lower than that. As you see, the risk of fiscal stress depicted on the chart begins at 45 or greater. So, and in comparison to towns in our region, as well as all New York State towns, Penfield's score is well below all the others, so significantly lower. And then before I get into more details about where we're going with our 2022 budget, we would like to give you an update on where we've been and some of what we've accomplished over this past year. First slide here, I'm actually going to let Supervisor LaFountain address because he is well-versed in community choice aggregate.
Thank you, Barbara. So this is an initiative that the town board began a number of years ago, requested our Energy and Environmental Energy Advisory Committee to take a look at CCA, Community Choice Aggregation. It's a way to help stabilize, at the very least, possibly lower our electric bills. We went through, we adopted a local law. From there, the town board directed the committee to select a program administrator. We went through the RFP process. We did select Good Energy to be our program administrators. And currently, we're working on a program that you'll start to see towards the end of this month. I think the letter is dated October 25th. That letter will come from myself to all of our residents, and it'll identify CCA and what it means. That letter will be followed then by a letter from RG&E. It'll also be followed up with a couple of postcards and robocalls from RG&E. So RG&E will continue to provide the delivery of our electric service. So if a line is down, if there's a problem, RG&E will be the group that you will call. But we will be getting our energy from Constellation New Energy. And so if you've not had a chance to take a look at a previous public information meeting we had, you can view that online. There is one coming up on November 8th in this room, and residents are welcome to either tune in or to attend. Good Energy will have representatives here to talk about things in a little bit more detail. As everybody can see through gasoline prices, natural gas prices are going up. The town was able to lock in electric for the next 2 years at a cost that will remain stable at that point. And the way energy prices are going up may in fact help our residents save some money as well. So that's a bit on CCA. I could spend a lot more time, but in the interest of time, I will turn it back over to Barbara.
Thank you, Tony. Continuing on with what we've accomplished in 2021, the comprehensive master plan, the comp committee meetings resumed in 2021 after taking a hiatus due to COVID, as with many other things that went on hiatus. And they are looking to complete that comprehensive plan by the end of 2021. The town engaged BME to complete a conceptual master plan for the former Shadow Pines property. That plan includes recreation infrastructure such as a disc golf course, mountain biking trails, as well as pickleball courts. And the town also is currently working with Bergman PC for evaluation of the Clark House on what it might take to renovate and continue. Here we have a couple pictures of some streams, what our DPW has accomplished this past year, 2.5 miles of newly maintained streams and drainage ways. It's very important that we keep up with our extensive drainage system to avoid any flooding in neighborhoods or of the ponds and any associated obstructions. We actually obtained a grant for the installation of 4 pedestrian button flashing signs. They're located at 2 are located on 5 Mile Road, including one at the corner of Liberty, as well as 2 on Baird Road, one at the corner of Henderson, and one further down for student crossing. This was done in coordination with Monroe County, so this was a great effort and to give safety to our students and other pedestrians while crossing the street. This was our new parking lot at Greenwood Park to provide safer access to the park and keep vehicles from parking on street. Great addition by our DPW. We also were able to resurface the courts at Harris Whalen Park, and also restriped the courts so that there is another location for outdoor pickleball. This is a picture of one of our new 6-wheel plow trucks purchased this year. We are just receiving it now due to supply shortages, which I'm sure everyone has been hearing about on the news, also impacted us as far as our equipment acquisition. So we are thankful that we will have some new trucks as we head into the winter. This slide isn't exactly a highlight of this year, unfortunately, but it is one that greatly impacted our infrastructure and our staff over at DPW. What this slide is a picture of is our pump station and how it was impacted by residents and others flushing wipes and such, that everyone was being very cautious about being clean and germ-free during COVID, but as the supervisor likes to say, just because it is flushable doesn't mean it should be flushed. And what that did to our infrastructure, as you can tell, it was very impactful to the pump stations. And then that second photo is of a manhole that, if that rises up and gets full of unpleasant things, that also can be very unpleasant for the residents. So our DPW staff spent many hours and continue to spend many hours cleaning those out and keeping things flowing. Because as we've talked about before, although this isn't something that we think about too often, we hope that everything is running smoothly, and when it's not, that's not something we want to face. So unfortunately, this was a very real part of the pandemic for our infrastructure. A more positive note, our recreation programs are back normalizing to pre-pandemic levels. With some adjustments for safety, popular events did return in 2021. That we had the family snow night, Independence Day, and several amphitheater concerts. Kind of on our resident services side, our town website, online tax payments started being offered, and this is offers credit card payment convenience at a minimal service charge, which has been really embraced by the residents. Also, our building permits increased, which people are continuing to invest in their properties all through 2021. The town's records management system, we did purchase and install a new mobile shelving system, and also are working on kind of in-house preservation of town records, which is wonderful going forward and has been a great asset to our building. For cable TV and the website, meetings live on Zoom and available on the website. As you can see, live meeting coverage increased 300%. We're now averaging 16 to 18 per month. And although many meetings are now open to the public, a lot of people still take advantage of being able to watch things via Zoom. The library added 2 new streaming services, Craftsy, which is a baking, cooking, sewing, drawing streaming service, as well as Great Courses, which has an educational focus, history, travel, economics. And then also, when possible, the library does intend to have all the programs incorporated with a virtual component going forward. And then our senior community needs, obviously we had to make some changes during COVID, and we continued to make changes in 2021. We just offering the curbside lunches and now returning to in-person. So it was a year that was a challenge, continued with challenges, but as always, everyone stepped up for those challenges. Over in our town court, Judge Mully was actually presented by the Monroe County Magistrates Association. He was awarded Magistrate of the Year for 2020. Judge Metzler was appointed to the Committee on Criminal Trial Instructions, and Judge Metzler is the only town or village justice in the state on this committee. They write and publish jury instructions for courts statewide, so that's a pretty high honor for her. Also, since 2010, the town has received nearly $60,000 to renovate a courtroom, the clerk's offices, as well as the grand jury room, and that has been saving Penfield residents money through those JCAP awards for renovations. Kind of employee recognition side, the Rochester Business Journal recognized us with a Workplace Wellness Award. Penfield received Rookie of the Year. So that was a highlight for us. Our DPW, as of today, they're still going strong with no lost time for 436 days. And given the nature and inherent danger of their daily work, that's a pretty impressive statistic. And that kind of lines right up with our next little bullet of the Comp Alliance Safe Workplace Award. It was a new program implemented by the Comp Alliance, who is our workers' comp insurance carrier. They started this in 2020. We received it in 2020, and we received it again in 2021. So we are a very safe workplace, and whenever they come out and do audits for us, they actually compliment on how well we do with our safety programs, our safety training, and just really making sure all our employees are safe here. So now I'm going to get into where we're going in 2022 and what the budget will provide to the residents. First off, the distribution of the budget dollar. The town is primarily a provider of services to the residents, so the largest percentage of the budget is appropriated towards employee payroll and benefits. The allocation for contracts and materials, kind of the consumable level during the year, is the next largest piece. And for 2022, the appropriation for equipment was actually increased. Therefore, the equipment share went up a little bit, and the capital, that increased to 13%, and the capital is at 11%. That being said, about employees and service provision, this is our 5-year picture of a number of employees eligible for town benefits, vacation, personal time, holiday pay. So this is our head count, and as you can see, there is an increase planned for 2022. This includes a new full-time engineering position, which will have a strong focus on sustainability, a new part-time position in PCTV. As I mentioned, they've taken on a lot with adding on so much Zoom meetings and virtual coverage. A part-time position was increased to full-time in the supervisor's office. And during 2021, a part-time position in the animal control was increased to full-time. So that represents our change here in our full-time employees. And as I mentioned, our workplace safety is a great thing. Our workers' comp rates are actually 15% lower now than in 2016. So all the employees here are really doing a great job staying healthy and keeping a safe workplace. As I had mentioned about the capital outlay, approximately 13% of the preliminary budget, just over $2.8 million, is appropriated for equipment and capital. This includes our heavy-duty and light-duty equipment, playground equipment, facility improvements, computer components, as well as funding for our annual road program, sidewalk program, and our sewer pump station improvements. The Department of Public Works receives the largest portion of the overall budget, as the department will receive just over $9 million, or approximately 41% of the proposed budget. This is allocated for the maintenance of 287 town lane miles, 359 miles of storm and sanitary sewer, as well as the winter maintenance of an additional 131 miles of state and county roads. The DPW budget also provides for the maintenance of the 10 town parks totaling over 380 acres, as well as all town buildings. The Penfield Public Library, as we recognized earlier, is a wonderful resource for all our residents. We welcomed 90,969 visitors in 2020, still under COVID restrictions, and open limited hours for most of 2020. So that's why that statistic is a little down than it has been in prior years. Patrons accessed over 304,000 items, either through in-person circulation, curbside service, or remotely in digital format. And as I mentioned, they have new offerings there, so the library continues to be a wonderful asset. Our recreation department, another one of our busiest areas, as Tony mentioned, as I mentioned, programs and participation continue to normalize our recreation department back to pre-pandemic levels. Safety precautions continue to be a priority for the vulnerable populations, though, but happy to say that we're seeing a lot of great activity over there once again. The 10-year taxable valuation, the town continues to see growth in planned development as well as in home improvement. Not sure what happened. The valuation increased to $3.28 billion this year, which is an increase of 80.83%. And then this is a summary of our preliminary general governmental budget. The general governmental funds are what determine our rate per thousand on our taxes. Appropriations are just over $18.4 million. Revenues are estimated to be $8.7 million, and a fund balance contribution from general fund, highway restricted fund balance, as well as library fund totaling $575,000. That's a resulting tax levy of $9.12 million. With the town's taxable assessment at the $3.28 billion, the anticipated tax rate will remain at $2.78 per thousand. That being said, for an average household valued at $205,000, the taxes are anticipated to be approximately $569.90 of the general governmental portion of the tax bill. In comparison to the other towns within Monroe County, Penfield, as you can see, 19, 20, 21, the rate has stayed flat. We are sixth among all the 19 towns in Monroe County. Riga has no town tax rate, so we're fifth among the ones that have tax rates. So we are among the lowest in the county once again. As we look forward, every year when we put together the budget, we do have an eye for the upcoming forecast for approximately 3 years. Obviously, we did learn that COVID can change a lot of things, so we always still are conservative and realistic on what we can expect to see. So what we're looking at is a pretty steady, with increases expected for inflation and as the consumables like gas and things like that will continue to go up, but we're anticipating infrastructure and facility improvements in line with our long-range planning. Our non-tax revenues that are estimated to be received in 2022 are estimated to be higher than in 2021. We have been seeing strong growth in sales tax, mortgage tax, and though we still budget this side of the budget conservatively, we do expect to realize greater revenues in 2022. As far as our special districts, our sanitary sewer, the cost for residential sewer services, difficult to say, it will be $95.98, which is approximately $4.61 less than it was in 2021. It was the debt service portion. It has been decreasing because as the sewer infrastructure is paid off, we do shift some of the appropriations up towards maintenance and upkeep for the assets. So obviously it's kind of a balance there. But as it stands today, sanitary sewers are available to the majority of residents. In the remaining areas, installing sewers is not possible due to conditions and capacity. For our drainage rate, the rate will increase slightly from 2021 as we continue to meet all federal and state stormwater regulations. As I mentioned earlier, the town's drainage system is extensive and includes all retention and detention ponds, as well as our creeks and surface drainage. Our lighting district rates will remain essentially flat for 2022, as they did, the same as 2021. And this slide is in regard to our ambulance districts. We do collect on behalf of the districts, and then all tax monies are forwarded to the districts and are not part of the town's annual operating budget. The tax rate is anticipated to remain essentially flat for both districts for 2022. And this slide we include as on the combined town and county tax bill are the levies for the 3 fire districts which serve the town of Penfield. Each fire district has the authority to levy taxes, and each is completely separate from the town's budget. So this slide is really for informational purposes. The proposed budgets are posted on the bulletin board if anyone would like to see more of the details regarding appropriations and revenue. But we just like to share with you what's anticipated for 2022, what we know so far in the proposed budgets. And kind of wrapping it all up in a final slide is a depiction of the total budget with the $21.7 million, our revenue at 8.8, our fund balance contributions totaling $1,074,370, with approximately 11.7 to be raised in taxes. This is total taxes for the general governmental funds as well as all the special districts. Sorry. Additional fund balance are proposed to be appropriated in the sewer fund and drainage fund for the purchase of necessary equipment, including a new Vector and a wheeled excavator, which I mentioned earlier. These purchases were anticipated for 2022 and are part of DPW's multi-year equipment plan. The proposed budget is fiscally sound and will provide the continuance of important day-to-day services as well as recreation and cultural programs for residents of all ages. And once again, I'll mention that the tax levy is actually decreasing for 2022 and no additional burden to the residents, and the same great services we will provide once again. Going forward, we will be having on October 27th a town board special legislative meeting with anticipation of adoption of the final budget. Between now and then, as the town board has been doing, any comments that come in, the town board reviews and works to develop the final budget. So we welcome any questions or any input towards the budget as we get ready for next Wednesday.
Okay. Barbara, thank you as always. Appreciate all your effort going into this budget process, working not only with my office, but all of our department heads and the town board. You do a great job of pulling all that together. And one question before I turn it over to our chairman of Law and Finance. If I wanted to see this budget in a little bit more detail, how do I do that?
Yes. The budget is actually posted on the town website, the preliminary budget in detail, as well as the tentative budget, as well as the two presentations we have done, the tentative and tonight's presentation. Hard copies are also available in the town clerk's office. So anyone who would like to come and review them, or they can contact me, and I will happily provide a copy to anyone as well.
All right, great, thank you. So with that, I'm going to look over to my friend, Mr. Moore, who chairs the Law and Finance portion of our town committees for any of his thoughts or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Real quick, Barbara, thank you for your presentation. I know as a town board member, certainly on my last year on this board, greatly appreciate you involving the town board in what you're doing to lead up to the presentation today and taking our insight and our input in and working with the departments and coming up with a budget that does not raise the town property tax rate. And I think that, real quick, Mr. Supervisor, I'll save a lot of my comments for the actual vote next week, but I just want to reiterate our thanks to you and your leadership as supervisor over, I believe now, the last 12 years. This is your 12th town budget, if my math serves me correctly, and we're not raising the tax rate this year. We didn't raise it last year during the pandemic when a lot of the 19 municipalities in Monroe County did decide to raise taxes. And I think that really emphasizes your commitment to fiscal responsibility and really looking out for the interests of residents and their budgets and their how much money they have during the pandemic and what they need to be spending that money on, their pocketbooks and so forth. I think it's also worth noting that the tax rate under your leadership, Mr. Supervisor, today at $2.78 is less than it was 20 years ago in 2003 when it was $2.95. 20 years later, today, our tax rate is less than it was 20 years ago in 2003, and certainly you deserve a lot of credit for that. Barbara did show a slide that I think really says a lot about your commitment as supervisor over the last 12 years to fiscal responsibility and looking out for the best interest of residents as far as maintaining level taxes and not raising the tax rate in this town. The New York State Comptroller comes out every year with that fiscally stressed list. There are a lot of towns and cities and villages and counties on that list. The higher that number is, that's not a good thing. And the State Comptroller gave us a rating of 0.0, one of the best in the entire state. And I think that is the best score you can get. I'm not sure you can get any better than a 0.0. But certainly that is testimony to your commitment to fiscal responsibility and the great shape that this town is in when it comes to managing the taxpayer dollars. So I just want to mention that, obviously, your commitment to reducing workers' compensation 15% in the last couple years. Ultimately, what that means is that saving taxpayers money who foots the bill for workers' comp for town employees, and any reduction to expenses is a good thing because that saves us money when we're putting together the town budget. So greatly appreciate your commitment there. I'll save the rest of my comments for our vote, and certainly this is a public hearing, and we'd like to hear from the public. That's the purpose of this meeting, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Thank you. Board, before I open it up, any additional comments that you would like to add, and then we'll open it up to the public. All right. I'll ask our clerk, has anyone signed up to speak on specifically the budget?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board specifically on this matter? Okay. I'll check my magic screen for, we have no callers and we have no emails coming in. Then I will say at this point, the public hearing for the 2022 budget for the town of Penfield is closed at this point. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to item number 2, public hearing number 2, please, Sue.
And to consider adoption of Local Law 1 of 2021 to be known as a local law opting out of allowing cannabis on-site consumption sites in the town of Penfield. The legal notice was posted in the Penfield Post on September 30th, on the town board's website and town clerk's bulletin board, and no postcards were mailed, being a townwide action.
Great, thank you, Sue. Mr. Horowitz, is this properly before the board?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you very much. And I'll ask, as you have the microphone, if you might take just a moment to highlight this particular public hearing.
I'd be glad to. This public hearing is on the issue of the consideration by the town board of adopting a local law that would allow the town to opt out of allowing cannabis on-site consumption sites in the town. This is in the context of relatively recent New York State legislation allowing an expanded or a new use for recreational use of marijuana in the state, and it also authorized various licenses for certain activities such as expanded medical uses, but also on-site consumption sites. The deliberation of this issue involves several important public issues, moral issues, health issues, financial issues, law enforcement, traffic study issues, and the safety of our children. So although the on-site consumption sites for marijuana lounges, if you will, are authorized under the law, the New York State law also allowed communities, localities, to recommend to the state to opt out in their communities where it was felt in the public interest and public safety to not at this time allow on-site consumption sites. And the purpose of this public hearing is to allow the public to give input to the town board regarding all those issues.
All right, thank you, Mr. Horowitz. I appreciate that. Board, I'll ask any questions for Mr. Horowitz at this point, or Mr. Costello, our Development Services Director that has worked on this on our behalf. Okay, seeing none, I'll ask again our Deputy Town Clerk, Sue, has anyone signed up to speak on behalf of this particular public hearing?
No.
All right, thank you, Sue. And as of right now, there are no emails in or calls waning. So one last opportunity for any questions, board, or additional input, Mr. Horowitz? Okay, seeing none, I'll declare this public hearing closed. Let's talk about next steps for this, as well as our budget. The next opportunity that the town board will discuss our public hearings will be next Wednesday, the 27th. We're actually having a special legislative session to look to adopt the budget. We will also have a work session following that that will take into account these two public hearings, and we'll discuss those matters, as well as any additional materials that might come in between now and then, and the board will then take action either at that meeting or a future town board meeting. So that's the next steps with all of our public hearings this evening. With that being the case, we'll move on to public hearing number 3, please, Sue.
To allow for new ownership and operatorship of historically designated property located at 2567 Browncroft Boulevard, located in R-1-20 zoning district. The legal notice was published in the Penfield Post on September 30th. On the town website and town clerk's bulletin board, 40 postcards were mailed.
Great. Sue, thank you. Mr. Horowitz, is this properly before the board?
It is.
All right, thank you. I'd like to next recognize Mr. Costello for some additional comments before we have the applicant address the board.
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Costello.
On April 3rd, 2019, after numerous months of discussion and negotiation, the town board did grant a special permit to allow an historic site to be utilized and converted from a 3-family dwelling into an 11-unit complex at 2567 Browncroft Boulevard. And it did so subject to several conditions. The first condition being that the applicants, then Mr. and Mrs. Wynn, shall obtain a special permit from the town clerk and pay the appropriate fee. Said special permit shall not be transferable, and any future owner shall be responsible for obtaining a special permit from the town board to continue to use the site for the approved 11 studio units or any other proposed use for the site. So condition number 1, put any potential buyer into a situation where they had to come back to you and explain their position as to what they'd like to do with the property, and then seek your approval to do so. We have with us tonight Mr. Chris Ogden, who is interested in purchasing that property. I've spent quite a few meetings with Chris. Chris did come to you to talk to you informally recently about his proposal, and you did allow for a public hearing to be put in place for him to move forward. With that, Chris, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about what your intent is for that property.
Thank you, Mr. Costello, and thank you, the board, for having me here again tonight. My intent with the property is to continue the use as is the special permit that was provided to the current owners. I'm asking to be continued under my own ownership, operating it with the 11 studio apartments, as is with the only 2 foreseeable changes are I'm going to pursue the sign out front that was discussed previously in meetings that hasn't been created yet. Designs haven't been created yet, but that would go in front of the Historic Preservation Board as that would be required. And exciting for Penfield and this property as well, Greenlight Networks is now on Browncroft Boulevard in that area, and I've had preliminary conversations with them as being able to provide that to the residents of the property, and hopefully continue to encourage them to expand in the Penfield area.
Okay. So at what point in the process are you with looking to acquire this? Is there a formal offer that's in with the property owner? And
so Ms. Wynn and myself have entered a formal contract that was earlier in September. Once that was put into place, I had reached out to Mr. Costello in order to make sure we got on the schedule for the board, because I knew that was going to be a requirement. It is one of my requirements for purchase. If the board does not approve it, I will not be moving forward with the purchase, because it doesn't. If there's not the permit, it can't continue its current operation, and it's a whole longer process. Ms. Wynn and myself are waiting for some review, obviously, by the board, and then the bank as well, who is working through any requirements that they have, because there will be a bank involved.
Got it. And you're familiar with the April 3rd, 2019 resolution that the board prepared, and that was all the conditions of approval for that particular site?
Yes, thankfully I had the opportunity to review that before we entered the contract phase with the current owners. Mr. Costello and I have reviewed it again, and that is how we got to this evening, where we confirmed an additional public hearing would be needed because the special permit is not transferable. But the hope is that the continued use as is will be allowed under my own ownership.
Okay. And so the operation, as we know it today, the 11 units would be a short-term rental type of basis.
So in my conversations with Ms. Nguyen and discussing what her original intent was and what she's seen, one of the clientele that I am looking for is very similar to hers, but one of the things that she has come across in her renting is some of them are not that short term. And some of the clientele have included missionaries that are on sabbatical because they've come home during COVID and it's difficult to return to the countries that they were working in. So having a place that they can come to that is fully furnished when they typically don't have anything themselves. They've been there for a year or more. Additionally, there have been, what we commonly call snowbirds returning from Florida for the summer, or their 6 months of New York residency that have been there in order to visit either their family or friends in town or spend more time with their grandkids. Then, of course, continuing to focus towards some of the traveling executives, whether that be nurses or many of the medical interns that come to Rochester for the medical community that we have.
Are you aware of any violations on the site at this time?
No.
Okay. All right, board questions for the applicant?
Chris, I just had one question. Are you proposing to purchase this property? You're a local resident?
Yeah, so I live in Fairport. I have been a resident of Rochester since 2005 when I came to RIT. I've stuck around. I got a job here locally full-time. I moved to Fairport in 2012 to a house that I built in a community out there. And recently I've moved again as my family got bigger, but still in Fairport. And the goal is to stick around for a long time. And even prior to coming to Rochester to live, on my way here, I was thinking about how right off of Panorama Trail is where I spent many Thanksgivings and Christmases because my aunt and uncle lived there. And before that, even on 5 Mile Road. So I've been in the Penfield area for a long time, and it's been a nice area to spend holidays, and I have in-laws that are in Penfield now as well, and my intent is to be in the area for an extended period.
Great, that's wonderful. Chris, are you also the property manager then, as well as the owner?
Yes, I have a lovely wife that will help me with it, but yes, I do much of it myself.
Great, thank you.
So there is no plan to live on site?
No, there's not.
Okay. All right. Board, other questions, other comments?
My question's for Mr. Costello.
Yes.
I think you mentioned there were 11 conditions in the WINS application?
There were actually 13.
13. And so are those carrying over to, would that be transferred then all 13?
Yes, absolutely, and I've already let Chris know that would be the case if you were to approve this, that he would be responsible for maintaining all of the conditions. Most of the conditions have been complied with and adhered to. In follow-up to Mr. LaFountain's question a minute ago, were there any violations on the site? The site didn't have any violations. The only thing that had just recently been completed of all the things that we recorded in our letter of credit was the paving of the driveway and parking area, which has been completed. Everything else has been done to our satisfaction on the site with respect to drainage, lighting, placement of the garage, that type of thing.
I think, and we also, I think we spoke with Mrs. Nguyen back when there was an issue with the neighbors to the south. I think it was over visual
Yes, that was an unfortunate circumstance. The problem that occurred was Mrs. Nguyen wanted to put up a wall similar to the one next to this building, which really it would have been an effective buffer, no question about that. It just didn't have the historic character, and it wasn't dated properly for the site, so they didn't approve it. They did find that there was already a chain link fence running halfway through the property from a neighbor's, from the west side of the property. So they continued that as a condition. This board also required plantings to be placed on a berm adjacent to that fence, which are there in place. You can kind of see them in the back. But in any event, that was done. The neighbors, as you can see now, here's the area in question. The neighbors themselves have gone in now and they installed a fence, a stockade fence, to give them better buffer, which I commend them for. So now you actually have two fences adjacent to each other, which may become a maintenance nightmare for the owner because there's going to be debris and stuff caught between the two fences as we go forth. But everything is in compliance with what you had approved and what the planning board had approved.
So the issue's gone, maybe except for there's two fences now, but the issue that was there has been resolved.
Yes, because the neighbors took the initiative to install a fence for themselves.
Okay, thank you.
So I think it's important that, as part of this, the conditions of approval from the previous certainly are ones that, but make no mistake, if there's any additional items, the board has that power to add any additional conditions they believe are appropriate. So, board, further questions, further comments? All right, the purpose of the public hearing is to hear the public. Sue, has anyone signed up to speak on this particular matter?
Yes, Richard Ordsberg, I'm sorry, of 2586 Browncroft.
Got it. Thank you very much. Mr. Holzberg, feel free to grab either one of these seats, whatever you're most comfortable with.
This will be fine, thank you.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. I reside at 2586 Browncroft Boulevard, which is almost across the street, a little few houses down across the street. I also was active in the original application process when Ms. Nguyen applied to the board for a special use permit, applied to the town for a special use permit on this property. And I believe Mr. Costello probably remembers that in her application, her presentation indicated that she was going to convert this property to 12 and ultimately 11 units for the purpose of longer-term rentals, approximately 6 months, for the type of use that Mr. Ogden, is that correct? Yes. Is saying he wants to perpetuate. And I think it was on that basis that the board did approve that application. Well, what's happened since that time is this property is in constant violation of the resolution that was granted. I have in front of me today the Airbnb advertisement placed by Ms. Nguyen to rent this property on very short-term basis. That was never the intent when this board granted the resolution, as I understand it. We actually have comments. We have a comment from Thomas. We went for a two-night weekend trip, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I commend the board. I can hand this to the board. You can look it up on Airbnb. She's also advertising on, I think it's Verbo, VRBO, which is another website for short-term tenancies. And that is simply not what this board intended to have happen with this property. Unfortunately, when Mr. Ogden says he intends to continue the use that Ms. Nguyen has been using the property for, if it's to continue this type of use, that's wholly unacceptable to the community, to the neighbors, and I would hope to this board, because that's not what you granted her the use for. You did not grant her a use to have a hotel on that premises, but that's exactly what she's been using it for. That's exactly what she's advertising it for. And if Mr. Ogden intends to continue that use, we wholly object, and I believe this board should wholly object.
Okay, thank you.
And I can go back and, one more thing,
Yep,
Mr.
absolutely.
Supervisor. I can go back and forth through the resolution where it talks about protecting the nature of the community. It talks about tenants and their character, about background screening of tenants. Now, you're not going to screen somebody that's going to stay in your premises for 2 days. So I put to the board that that is not what this property was to be used for. And if this board does grant this assignment of the special use permit, as Mr. LaFountain said earlier, additional restrictions can be added. I would request that the additional restriction be added so that this type of use is not permitted. And Mr. Ogden needs to know that, because if his intent, and I don't know what your intent is, if your intent is to have an Airbnb there or to have short-term tenancies, and this board prevents it, he may want to reconsider whether or not he wants to go through with the purchase. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holzberg.
Would you like these?
I would like, if you wouldn't mind giving those to Sue, she'll make sure that the board gets copies of those. Thank you very much. And as well as Mr. Horowitz.
I only had one copy, so.
That's okay.
Do you want the copy back?
No.
Okay.
We can get.
No, I always like to ask.
Thank you.
Because we'd be happy to make sure we get it back to you if you like.
Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to address? Yes, Mrs. Holzberg, please. Sorry, I knew that too. As you were walking up, I knew that, so I apologize.
Yes, I just wanted to say as
For the record, if you would.
Pardon me?
Your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name's Miriam Blonda. I live at 2586 Browncroft Boulevard, across the street from the house under discussion. And I've been there close to 40 years. Did something similar to the Winds with renovating an older home, trying to keep the historical character, being very conscious of any additions that we provided in the house. I just want to remind the board, although it's a busy road, and Browncroft Boulevard is a main road, it's still a residential area. It's still a neighborhood. I feel very bad for the people across the street from the Winds, or I'm sorry, the Ross house, because they had to put a stockade fence up, use their own money for that. They have young children. I see a little playground set there, and people are coming and going and coming and going. Not that the board could do anything. People stand in front and smoke cigarettes during the day and the evening because they can't smoke inside. Well, that's fine, except this is a neighborhood. We don't know them. They're not neighbors. When I see Mary's responses to people who have stayed for 2 days through Airbnb, you know, well, thank you, and this back and forth correspondence, it just seems really bold to go against the board, to go against everybody in the neighborhood and really not care. I just don't know what assurances we have that this doesn't continue. That's all. Just, I hope the board would consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you. I'll ask anyone else in the audience that would like to address the board on this matter. Okay. I have no calls waiting on this application or emails coming in. I'll ask the board any other questions or comments that you have for staff or for Mr. Ogden. I'll ask Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello, is there anything that you believe should be added to the record that we haven't already heard this evening or was part of the application?
The only thing I can relate to the board and to Mrs. Blanda and Holzberg are the fact that the board never set conditions on the extent of stay on the site. As a matter of fact, there was one tenant that had been there for a long time that they actually wanted to have leave but didn't. But there was never an intent to say you could stay for 2 days or 6 months or 2 years or 5 years. And if you look at the resolutions, that was never addressed in the resolution either. I think the intent was, on the board's part, was to make sure the property was brought back to some former glory, which I think they did. Again, the fence issue was an unfortunate circumstance, but it was somewhat created by some of our rules and regulations regarding historic preservation more than anything else. I think she would have certainly put a fence up if she could have, but was not allowed to do that in this case. But the intent is, we are aware of the fact that people have been coming and going. She did indicate to us early on that she would probably be using VRBO and Airbnb, but we did not expect them to stay for 2 days, I would guess would be the case. I think I'd like to ask the applicant what his intent is to see where he's going with this versus where the winds were.
Sure. I see Airbnb and VRBO as marketing avenues. That doesn't always mean a short-term rental. I have been operating on both platforms since they first came out. I have a vacation rental in the Adirondacks that I rent out through both platforms. That is certainly typically more a 2 to 3 day weekend because of where it's located. But during the early days of COVID, it became a haven for people trying to get out of the city and get some space between them and their neighbors, where I had guests stay for 30, 40 days at a time in order to do that. So people are on those platforms for short term, but they're also on there for long term. In the case of some of the clientele, a targeting nurse may look at an Airbnb as an option because it provides them everything they need to sleep, stay, shower, make coffee in the morning, and they don't have to bring any furniture. And a traveling nurse may be on a 3, 6, or 9 month contract or even longer, but they're still using what many consider short-term rental platforms as a way to find those opportunities, because people aren't looking in the newspaper for apartments. People rarely look in Craigslist now for apartments, so it just becomes a marketing platform. Logistically, doing 2-night rentals in that property is a lot of work, and it's not something that I want to be doing. I want to find the longer-term tenants that are looking to stay there, and either during their contract or as they transition into the Rochester area, because this is their first time in Rochester, and this puts a wonderful face to Rochester and Penfield of how great it can be to live in and what it has to offer. It is a busy street. I go by there a number of times throughout the week, but even as the picture that Mr. Costello puts up shows, you don't see anyone there most of the time. I don't live across the street, so I don't have eyes on it all the time, for sure, but you can't see a single car there, but based on the leaves on the ground, I think that's in the past few weeks, and from my discussions with Ms. Wynn, it is fully occupied, but you can't tell that from the outside.
So, excuse me, so it is fully, to the best of your knowledge, it is fully occupied at this time? Okay, all right. Yep, just a minute, Mr. Holzberg, if you would, please. Anything else, Chris, on that particular item?
I have, concerns about what additional restrictions the board may come up with, and that could change things. But the goal is not to be a hotel and not to be constantly turning over new people all of the time. I live in a neighborhood of 150 homes, and by no means do I know every person's name or where they work or what they do or even which house they live in based on which car they drive down the street. So I think using that as a watermark for if knowing your neighbors is whether it's good or bad is a challenging statement.
Okay, all right. Mr. Costello, any additional items that you wanted to add to the record?
Not at this time, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Holzberg?
Your Honor, I do take, being in court, I apologize.
So is he.
Please, if you would sit down, because we do tape record these and we want to hear your lovely voice. Mr. Horowitz tells me that back in law school you had one of the most beautiful singing voices, within the class. So,
Mr. Horowitz and I sat next to each other at Syracuse Law School for 3 years.
I won't hold that against you.
So we know each other quite well.
I know you do. I know you do.
And after 52 years of practicing law, certain habits are hard to break.
I understand.
Like calling you, Your Honor.
Not a problem.
But in any event, Your Honor. Mr. Supervisor, I take a little issue with Mr. Costello, who I know and respect, that because I was at the original presentation. if the intent of the board was to allow short-term rentals, whether it be 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, they would not have put the restrictions in the resolution that they did about the character of the tenants, attaching a lease. Leases are not used in short-term 3, 5, 10-day rentals. It was obviously meant to have longer-term facilities. It may not be a year, could be 6 months, but certainly not short-term B&B type rentals. And I believe that if this particular use permit is assigned or allowed to be assigned, and Mr. Ogden's already indicated it's his preference not to have short-term rentals, but he's already said if he has to, he will. If that's what we're going to have there, then this board is essentially saying, if you want to do it, you can do it. And that was not what was originally approved by this board. So you're extending it. And I don't think that should happen without much more thought, public input, et cetera, because if you read the resolution, it's obvious from the words of the resolution itself that this was not the intent. Even though there was no restriction there saying it has to be 6 months or any length of time, it's obvious if you read paragraph by paragraph, it was meant to be longer-term tenancies. We use the word tenant. We don't use the word guests like you do in Airbnbs and in hotels. So I believe that this board needs to decide how that property on Browncroft Boulevard is going to be used, taking into consideration all the ramifications, the neighbors, the character of the community, the historic value of the property, and not just allow it to become essentially a hotel. A B&B is a hotel. That's all it is. Sometimes they offer breakfast, but it's still a hotel. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Before you leave, have you identified any violations per se in terms or diminishment of the character of the neighborhood with what's been going on since?
Lights in front, we were never...
Mr. Holzberg, if I could, thank you, as we capture this for those viewing audience.
Thank you. We never understood they were going to have those big bright lights up there, but okay, they're there, we're not going to make an issue out of it. But if we start allowing people to come in and using it as a hotel, I believe there will be change. There'll have to be changes.
Well, that you may be right. I'm not questioning that. I'm just asking, in the last year and a half since they've been doing this, have you noticed any reason that would cause for a diminishment of the property or the neighbors, or other than the lights going through the fence?
The board saw fit to grant the original resolution. It was the understanding of all of those that were involved with it, based not only with what we heard at the original application, but also how it's written. There was even a lease attached to the resolution.
I understand that. But my question to you is there been an issue of diminishment of the neighborhood?
Let me finish.
Okay.
So we had an anticipation. We were willing to accept that. We are accepting the use that's there that we understood would be, which was 6 months tenants. We have no choice. We didn't like it, but we accepted it. But now we start to see, and we just discovered this when this application came up, that it's now being offered and used as an Airbnb. That's not what was contemplated in the original application. And you can go back and look at the minutes, I'm sure. And you remember as well as I do about the 6 months and the executives and the nurses and all the people that are going to come there. Well, Mr. Thomas, who's in that comments, he's not a nurse or an executive. He's somebody who stayed for 2 days on a weekend with his wife. Again, it's a different use. It's not the same use that this board...
It's not the same use, but I'm just asking you as a neighbor, have you observed anything that would diminish the character of that property or the neighbors next to it?
Well, Mary Ann talked about the smoking outside.
Well, that's...
Mary Ann, maybe you want to comment?
Do I need to come up, or can I speak?
You can speak. We've got another microphone, so you can have one and he can have the other. If we need more, we'll get more.
To answer your questions, yes. I have seen some kind of a truck, camper, something out there it was always there. I didn't write down the dates and how long it was there. Overflow parking. I don't even know if they use the garages or if they just park along the driveway.
There was one
I
individual who did
remember-
that. There
Oh,
was
well?
one, yes, I know who you're talking
Then
about.
you answered your own question, I guess.
No, well, you can
To
park in
me,
the
that
driveway.
diminishes the neighborhood. My neighbors don't park their RV vehicles or their boats or anything else in their driveway or in their front yard. It's a neighborhood. You seem not to be aware of the fact that it's zoned residential and it's a neighborhood.
Can I ask you a question? Have you looked through Airbnb and identified that there's no other Airbnb listings in the town of Penfield?
Have I looked through it? I looked up just that one property, and I wonder about.
Because of this application, you have
Do you want me to finish?
become aware of this property.
Do you want me to
There are
finish
many
answering?
others. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, right next door, the former Mary Cariola house. I know the people that bought it or whatever. The neighborhood, the town said it could be used because it was for Mary Cariola while they owned it. And the same thing, a new owner would lose that. And I know they've talked about making that an Airbnb. And I thought the town said no, but I have faith in my town. I have not followed it along week by week and attended all the meetings. So yes, I have seen deterioration of the neighborhood from my perspective, from my neighbors always talk about, now what are they doing? If you want, I'll keep a log. I work from home now.
Well, I live there too, and I drive by it every single day. And the observation that this picture was taken today, but I drive by it every day. I don't see cars in that area. There was one guy who parked there.
Not in that picture, no.
He did it for vindictive reasons. He did not do it because he couldn't park in his garage, but I don't see a lot of overflow parking, if any, there.
As I said, you drive by, I don't know how many seconds it takes to drive by.
I drive by a lot looking at
Okay.
that because I'm
Okay.
questioning it.
How about-
I got it.
That's here and there.
I got it. Go ahead, Miriam.
My other, there are little things that we don't say anything about. I remember one meeting, they talked about an air conditioning vent being in the front of the house, not the side. It's in front. There's 1 or 2 units advertised right now, tonight, online. Unit 5 is available, for one. There were other people besides this Thomas person that stayed there as an Airbnb, and Mary replied to them.
You are right. There were modifications done, and I don't know how many meetings you attended. There were many, many meetings, both on the town board's part during work sessions, and also on the Historic Preservation Board's part. And because of state code requirements for ventilation and that type of thing, they did have to modify, and the boards did look at that, and they did approve it because of the state requirements for ventilation.
There was no
of the
other
site.
way then.
Pardon?
There was no other way, even if it meant sacrificing a unit to relocate the vents.
There was no other way, no. It's because it was all driven by the vending system that was in the home as they were remodeling it. But the boards did require the vents to be covered, and you see there is lattice work and that type of thing put on front of those vents on Browncroft.
Okay, I haven't looked today, but I have seen it looks like a big fan. I didn't notice lattice work. I'm not sure when that was done. I'm just telling you what is going on. I know there have been other adjacent properties to this home that are out of violation, that refuse to let the fire marshal in and things like that. It's an unpleasant situation all around.
Yeah, and in this particular case, the fire marshal is obligated to go in and visit because it is.
Okay, well, my
more than
email
2 families.
correspondent said, unfortunately, we're not allowed to go in and check this out unless we're invited.
Well, they are invited because the state code allows them to do it because it's a multi-residential use.
Okay, like I said, I'm not bringing up every person in the neighborhood, but
Right.
now we have an opportunity to change something. It was guaranteed, whatever year you gave them to go ahead for 11 units, and they're not really following that, so now we have another chance, we should use it.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that under
I think
advisement.
if you're running an Airbnb, if you're renting for $90 a day versus whatever the rent is for a 1-month studio apartment, financially, you would make more money that way. I don't know, if I was afraid of COVID and wanted to get away from crowds, I wouldn't go to a 11-unit, residence like this with common areas, common washers and dryers. That doesn't really make sense. Okay, thank you.
Got it. Thank you very much. All right. Any last-minute comments before I declare this public hearing closed?
Yeah, I have one more. So I first got into doing rentals in 2006. I moved off campus from RT. I had the opportunity to purchase with my dad a duplex property that at the time was a single-family residence. It had been added on to a number of times over the years, and it made more sense as a two-family in order to stay in compliance with the Town of Henrietta Town Code. There was a public hearing because many of the neighbors were very, very against it because it is a neighborhood, and having a duplex with 3 to 4 bedrooms in each unit was a concern. The town did end up approving it, and I lived there for 4 years. And I had mentioned this at the last meeting, but there was not public appearance at the last one. The neighbors got to the point that said we weren't making enough noise, we weren't having enough fun. I mean, this is a group of 6 college students, all guys at that point, and it wasn't a problem. I have every neighbor in immediate vicinity has my phone number, they have my email, they know they can contact me. For the safety of the tenants there are security cameras to validate anything that either the tenants are reporting or the neighbors are reporting so that I can act on it right away if there is a problem. But overall, I don't hear from any of the neighbors. The biggest complaint from the neighbors right now is Grubhub delivers to the wrong house. And I can't control the Grubhub drivers, but that's their complaint. And throughout the 15 plus years that I've been doing rentals in Rochester, I have only had to ask someone to leave once. It never even got to the eviction phase because he chose to move out after discussions. And when I was talking to a real estate attorney about that, she couldn't believe that was the case, to have rentals that long and never have a tenant that is problematic enough to require legal intervention. She didn't believe it. And that continues to this day. I've had tenants that when they moved out of one property this summer, it was a group of 4 living in a house, and they asked me, do you have any 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms? Because 2 of us want to keep living together, and we want to keep you as a landlord. They didn't want the unknowns of another landlord. They wanted to know that they were going to get a safe, comfortable environment, a responsive landlord that took care of any issues that they had in a timely fashion. And they wanted to stay living with me. I started looking for properties to try and put them in because they were good tenants. And there are good landlord-tenant relationships that can happen because of that. Unfortunately, it's easy to be a good landlord because there are a lot of bad ones out there. And I think the house in Henrietta, there's a neighborhood Facebook group that, everyone voices their opinions and concerns. And a common response when I interact on that is, we wish more landlords were like you. Because I'm aware of what's going on and they have access to me. And if the board does approve it, you all can have my phone number, all of the neighbors, every person that received the I believe it was 40 flyers that were sent out, they can have my phone number as well. They can call me at night, they can email me, I'll work to address it. If one of the concerns is the smoking outside, I agree, that's frustrating. I would work to remove that as a concern. If the lights are too bright, they're probably LEDs that can be dimmed after 9:30 at night. So there's still light for safety, but it's not as in your face as the neighbors may be concerned about. So there are options to address concerns. And obviously, the short-term rental nature is a concern, but that I don't want to be turning units over on a regular basis. I want, one of the discussions I had was when Greenlight was there, they have executives that travel now that Greenlight has expanded, same as Spectrum. And someone like Greenlight or Paychex or Paytac, Windstream now, they may want a corporate apartment that's available for their executives traveling, and that becomes a long-term lease that the corporation is then responsible for if there's any problems, which I think they have a lot more to stand behind than any tenant that's coming through.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll take all of the comments into consideration as the board deliberates further on this particular matter. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll declare this public hearing closed. Again, as a reminder, the next opportunity the board will have conversations on this matter will be next Wednesday. If you have an interest, you can come to the meeting here live. You can log in at penfield.org, watch streaming video. And if you happen to be a Spectrum customer here in Penfield, 1303 on your dial, you'll be able to watch that live. Thank you for everyone that participated. We appreciate all the input. All right, we'll continue on with our agenda. We have communications and announcements next. And I'll ask the board, starting with Councilperson Trott, any announcements tonight?
Mr. Supervisor, if I can make just one. And this is a request of some of my neighbors. Walking and do a lot of walking all throughout Penfield, specifically in the Four Corners. Please, please, please be cognizant of your pedestrians walking, children walking to school throughout the intersections. I know we, and Barbara Chernow talked about and showed us some pictures on her budget report about some new lights that went out, some new crosswalks rather with lights that you press. I noticed that people just aren't looking around enough for people walking, people biking. Please, please be considerate of your neighbors and, you know, in the town. And I guess that's just my soapbox I feel like coming on, because I want to make sure everyone stays safe in this town. So thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ockenden?
No communications.
All right. Mr. Moore?
None tonight.
And Mrs. Cole?
I just want to remind everybody that the Halloween Family Fun Night is going to take place this Friday, October 23rd at the Penfield Community Center. And it has trick-or-treaters, games, music, hay rides, and more. And also the Ghost Walk is back. I've been involved with that for many years. It's one of those people that takes people through Oakwood Cemetery, and it's set up for different historical ghosts throughout the cemetery. If you'd like to go to that, that's at 6:30 at the Penfield Community Center. Thank you.
Great. I have one item. Monroe County Sheriff's Office Zone A are going to have a community open house. That's at 955 Panorama Trail South. It'll be Saturday, October 30th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Come tour the zone, see the vehicles, meet our deputies. There will be coffee, donuts, and activities for the kids. They will provide safe child ID cards and car seat installation checks. So if you're looking for some fun activity, go meet our local sheriffs that support the 3 Ps, Penfield, Perrington, and Pittsford, and take a tour of the facility. All right. Very good.
I have a couple announcements.
Let's move on to public participation.
I have a couple announcements.
Is there anyone here in the, Sue, sorry.
I have a couple announcements.
You do? I'm sorry. Thank you,
That's
Sue.
okay. Once again, we are happy to have the Penfield Town Hall be a host drop site for Matt's Coats for Kids. Matt Fighton died in 2003 as a result of a tragic car accident. His family and friends have started the Matt's Coats for Kids organization with the goal of keeping the good feelings that Matt always shared by helping people. Since 2004, over 10,000 new or gently used coats have been collected and distributed. In 2016 and 17, the collection has expanded to include socks and gloves. A collection box can be found in the east entrance lobby of the Penfield Town Hall through Friday, November 16th. Distribution days will be held on Friday and Saturday, November 19th and 20th at the Brockport Fire Department Company Number 3. For more information, please call 585-721-5289 or visit their Facebook page. Also, each year, the fourth Saturday in October is National Make a Difference Day. This year, it falls on Saturday, October 23rd. One of the activities to occur on Make a Difference Day will be a food drive for the Penfield Ecumenical Food Shelf. The Penfield Food Shelf is a supplemental food relief organization serving 14526 and 14625 zip codes, in addition to serving families of children in the Penfield School District. The food drive will be held from 8 to 11 at the food shelter location at 1618 Jackson Road. For more information, please visit PenfieldEcumenicalFoodShelf.com. And one more. Town Clerk Amy Steckloff received an email from a resident asking it to be read into the record. It reads as follows. Tony, I just want to express my thanks and respect for the many years of service you have given to the town. Supervisor is a demanding job with challenging problems to solve, long hours, low pay, and constant criticism. You managed it well, and you will be missed. Special thanks for saving Shadow Pines. That is from Bob Peterson on Clark Road.
Thank you. Thank you. That will lead us right into public participation. That kicked us off. Sue, thank you for that. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on any matter? All right. I'll take a quick peek on the computer to see if we have any calls or any emails coming in. And while I give that 30 seconds, I would just like to remind the Penfield community that this coming Saturday, the 23rd, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., the Penfield Volunteer Emergency Ambulance will be holding a health fair. And they're asking all of our residents to come join in. They're going to have flu shots, tetanus shots. They're going to highlight the equipment that they have, the availability that they can provide to our community, and that they do each and every day. So again, another opportunity to see a great organization in operation this coming Saturday, 11A to 3P. Seeing no calls or emails, we'll move on with the agenda. Additions and deletions to the agenda this evening, board? Seeing none. We do have the minutes of September 1st before us, and I would entertain a motion of approval for those minutes.
So moved, Mr. Supervisor.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Ocken, second by Councilperson Cole. I'll ask, is there any discussion on those minutes? Questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote of approval.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole. Aye. LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
The next item is petitions. Has the town board, town attorney, or town clerk's office received any petitions?
No.
Since our last meeting?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's move on to resolution by function, starting with law and finance, please.
Budget amendment in the general fund for Dayton's Corners.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the town of Penfield and the Friends of Dayton Corners wish to recognize Bridget Turnow for her years of volunteering. Whereas donations were received in Bridget's honor to plant a tree with a designated plaque. Whereas the town board desires to have an up-to-date budget in relation to current appropriations and revenues. Now be it further resolved that the 2021 budget amendment be approved. From Dayton Corners cash in the amount of $821.75 to appropriations under Dayton's Corners expenses for $821.75. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes. Amendment to Resolution 21T014, designation of official newspapers for 2021.
Moved.
Second.
Be it resolved that the town board in Resolution 21T-014 designated the Penfield Post as the official newspaper for the town of Penfield. Be it further resolved that in a letter received September 13th, 2021, the Daily Messenger notified the town that it would be ceasing publication effective the week of October 24th, 2021. Now therefore be it resolved that the Webster Herald be designated as the official newspaper for the town of Penfield for publication of notices, resolutions, local laws, and ordinances. Additionally, the Democrat and Chronicle and/or Daily Record may be designated as the official newspaper from time to time for publication of these notices, resolutions, local laws, and ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole. Aye. LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes. Authorization for supervisor to sign a contract with Sessler Environmental Services for selective demolition and minor abatement services to accommodate further investigation of the Clark House.
So moved.
Second.
Be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized to sign a contract not to exceed $15,800 for professional services with Sessler Environmental Services, 1330 Research Forest, Macedon, New York, to provide selective demolition and minor abatement services as identified by Bergman, P.C., to accommodate further investigations of the Clark House located at 600 Whalen Road. This resolution and the proposal submitted by Sessler Environmental Services shall constitute the contract. This agreement to be reviewed and approved by the town attorney. So therefore, be it resolved, the town board approves appropriation of $15,800 from the unassigned general fund balance as an amendment to the 2021 budget for these professional services. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole. Aye. LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
This brings us to old business. Is there any old business to come before the board this evening?
No, sir.
Seeing none, is there any new business to come before the board this evening? Again, seeing none. This brings us to our second opportunity for public participation. You may do that one of three ways if you're here in the auditorium. You can call in at 340-8771, or you can log on to penfield.org and we'll get an email right here. So I will give it just a moment. Once again, a couple of items coming up. I think Councilperson Cole mentioned the Halloween gathering that our recreation department does so well, and the Ghost Walk coming up this Friday. This Saturday, also the open house health fair at the Penfield Ambulance. So if you have some interest, please go support both of those activities and those organizations and the things that they do. I see no calls or I see no emails coming in. Therefore, the October 20th, 2020-21 legislative session of the Penfield Town Board will stand adjourned at 8:33 p.m. Thank you to everyone that participated. Thank you to Penfield TV. As always, be well and be safe.